Welcome, everyone. I hope you had a good summer, probably a variation of what you're used to for summer, but I'm sure it was good. At this point, I would like to go to the second item on our agenda, which is additions to and approval of the agenda. Are there any additions to our meeting or to the agenda?
Not that I have, no.
Okay. Also, I should preface this by saying, feel free to jump in to correct or assist me as I go along with this. I still prefer in-person meetings, but I appreciate your help wherever possible to make sure that we run things smoothly. So if there are no additions to the agenda, I would like a mover to accept the agenda.
I will move.
I'll do Matt, and as Terrence, I'll have you as a seconder. That's excellent. I appreciate it that you put your hand up because that's a visual for me to be able to do that. All right. The next item on our agenda is declaration of pecuniary interest. Everyone is silent, so we've accomplished that. All of you in your package would have received the the minutes for the previous meeting, and I have to comment that Sarah did a great job. That was her first go round with the library minutes. Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. Great job. So if there's anyone that would like to make a motion to accept the minutes. Becky, and is there a seconder? That Leanne. Thank you. So the minutes from the previous meeting have been accepted. Our next item on our agenda would be business arising from the minutes. This would be COVID operations update, and I'll hand the floor to Rebecca.
Hello, everybody. There's something funny with my display, so speak up if you need to interrupt me because I can't actually see all of you at once here. And I'm wondering, Sarah, do you have to control or can I control? I just wanted to...
You want to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm going to share my update if I can. There we go. Okay, can everyone see the recovery plan there on the screen? Yep, yes. Perfect. Thank you. So right now, in terms of our library operations, we are sitting in the library's action step 4. So we are still closed to general admission, but we are open for appointments at all 3 of our locations for computers and Wi-Fi for browsing. We are also offering curbside at the same time. So we have staff offering curbside as well as people coming in for browsing. Right now we're doing browsing 1 person at a time at each location. That way, if people want to bring their bubble, they can do that because it's not interfering with anyone else that's coming into the space. So for example, we have a lot of seniors who maybe do their outings with their neighbor. If their neighbor is their bubble and they need to come to the library as a team, then we are able to accommodate that. Most of our capacity for COVID recovery at this time is related to our staffing capacity and our inability to properly physical distance in our spaces. So that's why at the bottom of this step, or towards the bottom, it says that it continues until such time as physical distancing is no longer a recommendation of the health unit. Now, if we never go back to a time where we are allowed to stand beside each other, then obviously we have to reevaluate that strategy. But for now, this is how we are operating. We have not yet introduced everything on the list in our action step 4. We haven't gone back to offering our meeting rooms. We're just kind of waiting to see if any of our partners are actually starting up in-person meetings. We do have a lot of community partners that meet with their clients in our spaces, and as soon as they indicate that they need those things, then we will reevaluate or offer those things as best we can. So for example, there's a lot of one-on-one meetings in our library, and we should be able to accommodate that carefully in the listable library with some planning. What else did I want to make sure? So also for this plan, we are dedicating as much staff time as possible to customer service and cleaning requirements, because we have to be cleaned twice a day, rather than to having staff count heads or screen customers at the door. So that's another reason for why we're not going straight to general admission. And many libraries aren't there yet. There are a few that are starting where they have just limited general admission hours, might have a couple hours a day that they do that. But we have multiple hours a day for everything. It's just not general admission. So far, so good. We haven't had any requests for anything further than this at this point. So I'm just going to sit here for a little bit and see how things go in the next few weeks. I did have a question to fire back to the board about COVID recovery, but first I'll stop and see if anyone has any questions about the plan, because I did shoot it out to you over the summer, but you haven't really had a chance to discuss it. Okay, so I will stop sharing my screen again so that we can just go back to seeing more of each other here. And then, so my question for the board was to do with consistency of service. So right now, everything that we've implemented has been something that could be implemented at all 3 locations. So when we implemented curbside, we did it at all 3 locations. When we did by appointment, we made sure that we were able to do it at all 3 locations. And my question for the board is, how important is it to you that things are implemented consistently in that way? So for example, we might be able to, as things loosen up, we might be able to do something in listable, but because of social distancing rules, we wouldn't be able to consistently implement that across all 3. The way I operated it over the summer was I didn't do anything if I couldn't do it consistently, because it's not the community's fault that COVID happened, and it's not really related to their levels of use, right? Like everybody, we've made the decision to have 3 locations in our system. So seniors, it's important for seniors to be able to walk to their local library to do these things, or they might not have access to the same transportation that they did prior, that they could have all come into listable to do that. So that's where I've been sitting with it. But it could come a time where we have either the opportunity to add something that we can't add at the smaller branches, or if, for example, as we approach school starting and as things open up more, if we have staff who have to be off for a certain amount of time, then our capacity reduces. So for example, if a staff person has a child that has to isolate for a certain amount of time and they don't have a childcare option, we have to be prepared for what we're going to do if our staffing capacity goes down. It takes longer to come back to work because sometimes you have to be cleared for COVID and wait for your test before you can come back to work. So we have a staff person now that by the time they get back, it'll be like almost a couple weeks before we have access to that staff person's capacity. So that if we have to reduce service, do we reduce it? How, like, do we have to keep, I'm not making sense to you, and I'm sorry. Do we have to keep consistency in mind for the board, or just do as best we can where we can? So I was just looking for your sort of feedback on how you feel about that.
Matt is wanting to comment.
Hi, thanks, Rebecca. I think it comes down to, obviously, if you look at physical limitations that we have, that if we have real estate available and even at the board level, arguably the most popular branch is the listable branch, then we can offer that service to provide as much service as we possibly can out of the branch that can accommodate that service. If Atwood can't accommodate strictly because of real estate limitations that they have, we can't say, well, if we can't even, like, that's apples and oranges comparative, in my opinion, as much as that is not keeping things consistent. This whole COVID has shown everyone that not everything can be applied consistency throughout, regardless of what the scenario happens to be. So if we have the means and the options to do it at the branch that has the obvious larger footprint, then we need to be able to at least offer that service within the North Perth library system. Because of physical limitations, that cannot be currently rolled out in Moncton or Atwood or whatever the reason happens to be. However, that service is available in Listowel. If we're offering services as a library, certainly we have two satellite locations in the main branch, or 3 different branches, my apologies. We have 3 different branches, but obviously when it comes down to, you can't fly in the face of mathematics, and if Listowel is large enough to do it, we have to be able to offer the services there, because there's been so many services that have not been available since March.
Yeah.
That if the service is available, full stop, yes, it's available. However, due to limitations, it's only being provided at the Listowel branch, and people will have to realize that. Like, if we can't do it there, we're not going to not carry it at all because it can't be done at all 3. That's like, it's like saying that the sandwich truck can't sell dine-in cooking because you're allowed to sell food. Well, I have a sit-down restaurant, whatever. We can't make that comparison, and I don't think it would be fair. If we can still offer the service, we can still offer the service. However, at this time, it's only available at one particular branch.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
That's my 2 cents.
Terrence, I believe you had put your hand up.
I think, sorry, I have a tickle in my throat. I think we should be as flexible as possible. And if one of the branches can't accommodate, I have no problem with it not being open. The only thing I would have a concern about is how we communicate what is available to our population. And I realize we have our website, but is that enough to communicate so people know what is available and what's not open, or what we can accommodate? That would be my only concern.
Mm-hmm. We've tried to not be sort of willy-nilly here. This is one thing this week and this is gone the next week. We've tried to kind of be as predictable as we can within this sort of unpredictable thing. So far we've been able to start small and add on, which is great, but we'll pay attention to communication if, for example, the province pulls back a phase, or if for some capacity reason we have to claw backwards, we will make sure to pay attention to communication. Thank you. I made note of that.
So basically what I've heard is Matt is saying space, that if there's sufficient space to be able to do the activity safely, I think that is the primary concern, both safety of the staff, safety for the public, as well as I agree with Terrence that the communication on both those pieces and communication going forward is a strong consideration. Are there any other comments regarding that? Rebecca, how does that sit with you, or do you?
That's great. Yep, thank you. I just wanted to hear the board's feedback on it, so I appreciate that.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to update the board with in terms of the COVID-19 operations?
No, I just wanted to be clear that with that chart that we could, if the province reverts to stage 2, for example, that I set it up so that we could revert as well. And it gives us something predictable so that the staff kind of know what to expect, and that if we had to share our rationale with the public, we could share, this is how we've proceeded forwards and this is why we're proceeding backwards. So that was just the goal of that document. But otherwise, and always, if there's questions as things arise, please feel free to just reach out and we can get you up to date.
Great. As I mentioned earlier, I think for me, safety is a real issue. And I think, as Matt said, space is necessary for that. At least I'm adding to that the safety issue is the concern, and space is important for that. And I think the Listowel branch is the one that realistically can accommodate that.
Yes.
If there's nothing else to that point, I would suggest that we move on to item number 6, which is correspondence.
I have none.
Okay, well, then I guess we go to item number 7, which will be the financial report. As in our previous meeting, because we have not met over a period of time, I would recommend that we put the financial documents in one bundle, and then we can do the moving and seconding of that all at once. I would also like to now address the board and ask if you have any comments or questions or observations from the material that you received. Becky?
Hey, sorry.
We can
Okay.
hear you.
Is that Backwoods Timber Service Desk? Is that for Moncton?
Yes.
Okay. Just
It
curious.
is for Moncton. Yes, we did. I did some quotes for service desks, and I had sort of something in mind. I wanted it to be height adjustable so that our staff could do what they prefer in terms of the service desk, stand or sit. And by standing makes it easier for COVID service. So by standing, you can kind of have yourself any plexi right straight between you and the customer's face. Anyway, so the quotes that came in were ridiculously expensive and weren't going to be what I wanted. Like they were just going to be too much like just a basic reception desk where there's like a ledge between you and so I did reach out to that local company and say, hey, can you make something really cool that fits my needs, and he was thrilled, and it's been delivered. I have it all covered up right now because I'm kind of, that's going to be the sort of showpiece of the space. So I didn't even include it in your sneak peek video, but I'm really excited about it. It was delivered this last week and it's just beautiful. So yeah, that's for Moncton.
Well done supporting local.
Well, it was the lowest. It was the lowest price. It was just, the other stuff was ridiculous to ship and not really what I had in mind for Moncton. So.
Okay. So could I have a mover to accept the accounts payable? Becky, is there a seconder to accept that motion? Terrence? All in favor? Excellent. Okay, now we'll move on to 7.2 is the 2020 operational budget update. Rebecca?
So just another update for you, just for the last quarter. I know you just had an update the last time we met, but it's been a few months. So provided for your information, the format this time is a little bit different than the last time. So the far right column is actually the percentage of our budget that's been used. It used to be the difference in the budget, how much money was left, but it's the percentage of the budget used. So just if you're trying to rationalize that with the way you used to see it, it looks a little different. So it was a little shocking to me too the first time. Overall, we're still in really good shape. A lot of our budget is staffing, and we did have a chunk of time where we didn't have our staff working up to full capacity. So far, so good. I do want to note for you that in the 6520 lines, which are for the collection, it looks like we don't have a lot of money spent, but we're actually 72% encumbered. So I've spent with ordering 72% of our collection budget to date. So we're doing pretty good, but COVID caused publication delays. It caused some things to not be published in certain formats. So we lost like large print formats of things, paperback publications were canceled and that kind of thing. So we're just waiting for delivery. Delivery from our vendors has started up again. And we do have the capacity to carry that if stuff that I ordered in 2020 doesn't arrive till 2021, we have the ability to not have that come out of our 2021 budget. So I've spoken with the treasurer about that already. So we seem to be good with the collection. We won't be losing out on anything that way in terms of what's coming. It's just a bit of a dry spell right now. Like movies, all of those things are all just not being released at the pace that they normally would. What else do I want to say? Again, just closely monitoring, and I'll let you know if there's anything that comes up that's a red flag. We did discuss tracking COVID costs separately at the June meeting, and I have been doing that, and just heard from the treasurer that there's potential for some relief for that for the library's budget. So I will work with her and we'll see how that impacts those lines. So some of our lines like office supplies and equipment are overspent just because of the cost of plexiglass screens and things like that. And also our extra cleaning that we've had to do is coming out of our staffing budget right now, but I had a conversation with the treasurer that there may be some things that we can do about that. So I will follow up on that at your next board meeting as well. Any questions about how the budget's going? This is the operational budget.
It doesn't sound like there's any questions. We don't have to do the mover and seconder.
Yep.
So just want to check.
Yep.
Okay, why don't we move on to the next item, number 8, the Friends report.
There isn't one. Sorry. I guess because of COVID, like we talked at the last meeting that our fundraiser was canceled. So I don't know when we're going to meet. I guess the potential for meeting will come to see about the Christmas fundraiser with Devils.
Right.
How that will look because of COVID, I'm not sure. I mean, it is all outside for the most part. So I guess this is September. So I'll have to be in touch with Christine. But other than that, we won't meet until then. So.
Okay. Thanks for that. I appreciate that, Becky. Number 9, board development. I wasn't sure.
I left it blank for you this time.
Okay. Is there anything that folks might be interested in terms of board development? I'd just like to put it out there. Or Terrence?
On September 24th, there's an all-day workshop. Souls is offering a workshop. It deals with multiple things. It deals with, I have written them all down here. I'm attending it. It's an all-day conference. It's dealing with basically the takeaways and the lessons we've learned from COVID-19. It's going to be talking about digital resources, and it's also looking at the health, they call it the healthy workplace, a life balance. So it's a whole day workshop. I'm signed up on the 24th from 9 to 3. So I'll give you some feedback on that when I've done the workshop.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. I look forward to hearing about it. Any other comments or impressions on board development? No, okay. Then we'll move on to new business, which is number 10.1, Investing in Canada Program Grant Application Update.
This is a short one and a sad one. We didn't get either of the grants that we applied for the Hub Listable Library Project or the EMCC Atwood Library Project, which Council was made aware of a few weeks ago. So just officially making the board aware that that decision was communicated to us recently. We are just going to regroup and see what comes next. So we do have a meeting booked with the United Way Hub team this month, and once Parks and Rec gets arenas open and all that stuff figured out for this season, we will also discuss next steps for EMCC with them. We do have placeholders in the 2020 capital budget that we won't likely be accessing in 2020 for furthering design work for both projects. So when we have our budget discussions, we'll have budget discussions about carrying those projects forward and looking for ways to not have either of those projects stall as best we can. I know it's a different landscape now. Fundraising is a different landscape now that everyone has some financial pressures to do with COVID. So disappointing news, but it's not, we're hoping that it's not the end for either of those projects. So, and Moncton shows us that you just keep at it, right? So we're just going to keep at it, and we will see the best that we can come up with is what we will come up with. Is my update on that one. And that's really it. I just wanted the board to know that officially that we've received that information.
Personally, I'm not really surprised, even though I know that our application would have been great and a strong contender given the amount of spending that's been happening due to COVID. I figured that probably would have altered whatever opportunities would have been out there. So any comments or input in terms of that item? Okay. Number 11, trends for discussion.
Again, I left it blank for you. COVID is the trend right now. We're all focusing on just keeping up to date with how that's going, and I will keep the board up to date as it goes along as well.
If you get any, just in the course of you getting emails and that sort of thing, feel free to pass things along in terms of personally, I find it harder to be more effective doing things online. And so if there's anything that we can do or things that we have to think of to think outside the box as a library board, I think that would be extremely helpful. But again, don't go searching for it. If it just happens to be something that comes across your path, just shoot us an email, or we can collect it at a later point. Take a look at it. Sorry, my screen did something funny. We can just take a look at it and review it. Is there anything else that anyone would like to do?
Rebecca, I had a question.
Sure.
Regarding the Children's Museum, I read an article in the Banner a little while ago regarding, I guess, a feasibility study that was funded to look into the viability of a children's museum. And considering the fact that the library is highly involved in youth, children, activities under normal circumstances, what are your thoughts on that? Or is it premature to ask that question?
I can reach out to so I will say I've been contacted for discussions in regards to the Children's Museum. I'm familiar with the organization that's doing their feasibility study just from my own work in library land. I've heard them speak that it's a great team of people. It's really exciting that a team of that caliber is investigating this project for Listable. So I as a resident and as a social services provider, I'm so excited for that possibility. I can ask if Jill is willing to either provide an update to the board, or I can forward any information that comes along on that project as it comes to the board. For now, I am being cooperative with the requests that come from that team, and we'll do our part to participate in that feasibility study for sure.
Good question, John.
Mm-hmm.
Leanne, I believe you had wanted to say something.
Sure. I was just wondering from Rebecca's perspective if there's anything that's been kind of neat or a benefit of this new way of doing business in the library. Just, maybe there's nothing. I just wondered if there's anything that you noted that was of benefit. Thanks.
That's a good question. It's hard sometimes because it's hard. One of the benefits, and I spoke of this when I was interviewed for the paper about how the library was faring in COVID. One of the benefits is that it highlights how well library land works together and how quickly we all share information with each other. And so if something comes out, we all as a profession in Ontario make sure that we're all informed. We've all been sharing all of our policies and procedures and bouncing ideas off each other. So that has been, it has highlighted how well libraries work together. The fact that even though we got very little information from the province when we got information, the fact that the province included verbiage for public libraries in all of their stages and mentioned public libraries in their first reopening stage is a positive for the advocacy work that organizations like FOPL and SOLS have been doing to raise awareness of the importance of libraries to their communities, because in my mind, I saw that as an acknowledgement of that we had a role to play in economic recovery even, and that the province noted that not opening libraries wouldn't be advantageous. So another positive for me. And then as a like on a local level, it really highlighted how much our staff are born helpers, and the fact that they weren't able to help for a while when we were not able to be open. They were so eager to find ways to help. They were so eager to get back to work when we brought them back. and everyone has been so positive with the changes to how we do things. They understand exactly why, and they absolutely want to protect the people that we serve, because we serve a lot of the vulnerable population, right? And so when we are implementing new policies and procedures, we have to think about the fact that we serve a lot of people who are at high risk for COVID as well. So our staff have been fantastic at what they do, and have shown that they have a passion for what they do, just by how they responded to A, not being able to work for a while, and B, coming back on into a completely changed work environment. Does that answer your question?
Just supplementary to that, the next stage will probably require a lot more, once we are allowed to bring the public in, some kind of logging or record keeping in order to have contact tracing. Is that something you guys are kind of preparing for in the event that that does happen down the road?
A lot of what we're doing now is so that we have the capacity to do that if we're asked. It's not actually at this point required of us.
Right.
It is. It is suggested to be a good thing, but because there's the app available, and because the other option would be to just say, how they just publicly say anyone who is at the North Perth Public Library listable location in this span of time should be aware. By keeping some records, it stops us from having to do that. But balancing that with how important privacy is to the public library, I'm doing it's a very fine line to balance between those two things. And if we're recording that someone has been to the library, then we have to be pretty clear about that. So we're walking it as we go. By not doing general admission at this point, we don't have as much to be as concerned about in that regard. So we have a lot of customers who just simply won't come if they know that their movements are going to be traced and tracked. So it's kind of a tricky line, and I'm kind of pushing on it because I get it from both sides. So, but privacy is extremely important in public libraries and to our users.
So they haven't provided more guidance around that in terms of the next stage to prepare? No. Okay.
We don't.
Interesting.
Yeah, in any stage, we have not had advance notice, and then the guidance, like for example, the guidance that came through after we were told we could invite people into our spaces didn't come through for several days after the announcement was made. And so the pattern has kind of been that the announcement is made, and then FOPL and OLA, Federation of Ontario Public Libraries, and the Ontario Library Association reach out for clarification for public libraries, and then we receive a document from them that we can use.
Okay. Have you looked at the government has stated that 30% of our real estate, as Matt talks about, actually determines what our capacity is in our buildings. Has that been worked out yet in order to prepare for the next stage as well, or is that going to be part of the next stage?
I think it will be for me, it's part of the next stage, or it's part of if we increase appointments in listable. So for example, if we're able to have more than one group browsing at one time in listable, then we would have to pay attention to those new numbers. I heard that this has come out, but I haven't actually seen them myself. So I do have to dig and do the calculations for the branches. I think we're probably just going to stay exactly where we are for a while until physical distancing is not required.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. It's a lot to think about, isn't it?
There's a lot to think about. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Leanne. Any other comments or input Matt?
It's certainly striking how much of a different world it was back in February of this year. Like it almost seems like a lifetime ago that we have changed how we do things 180 degrees, it seems to be. And it's totally stark in every aspect of our life. It's just, that was 7 months ago. We're not talking like how things were different, back in the 40s.
Yeah.
This is like February. Things are starting to ramp up in March. The plug gets pulled on everything, and okay, here we are now in September. It's just I shouldn't say amusing, but you have to look at it and say, oh my goodness, like what a difference, like back in the good old days when you could just go out and about and do your thing and not give anything a second thought. And then, then all of a sudden this comes down. I think it's been a significant education and awareness for everybody who's been involved with it, just because it's been absolutely everywhere that no one can say that they haven't heard of it.
It's been really hard in terms of some of the more not even forward thinking or modern anymore, but even just the last decade of library service and the trends that we've been trying to implement. And for example, there's a lot of libraries that didn't have a service desk when COVID hit. So how do you put up barriers to protect your staff when you didn't even have a desk to begin with, because embedded librarianship was part of the deal and you were kind of supposed to be out on the floor. And so we had, remember the video I did with the mayor towards the end of the year last year, and we talked about how our desk was a behemoth and listable. Well, guess what? Now it's great because we can attach plexi to the behemoth, but it goes so far backwards to time when there are libraries that have closed stacks right now. Like you can come in, but you can't touch anything. And that is way, 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 way back in library progress. So it's been difficult to just you do what you have to do, but it's so against like a decade of OLA conferences and all of those things, right? All the things that you've been trying to do to push your library into the future. It's just so, even just buying things for Moncton, right? Will people be able to sit beside each other again? I don't know. So how do I buy furniture? So the furnishing plan even for Moncton changed a little bit just so that we could separate things if we needed to. And that kind of thing. So I hear you. Our profession is so different today than it was in February.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier when we were discussing it earlier how libraries are so open concept. And I know in our situation, we built an office and we built actual separate offices. And I thought, oh, we're back in the 70s. Should we have done open concept? But now I am so thankful that we have individual offices that our staff has been able to come in, but they are, I feel secure for their safety but that's a plan that would have been suitable maybe much earlier on, but I'm thankful for that. And I agree with you, Matt. It's been a ride. If there isn't anything else in terms of trends of discussion, is there anything else that's come to mind as we've been talking? No? How about we move on to number 12, which would be other business to 12.1. This is the fun part, Moncton Branch progress update. There's always silver lining.
This one is a big one for me, especially in 2020. This is the silver lining of 2020. I did slip a video into Dropbox today. I don't know if everyone had a chance to view it, but I'll see if I can get it to come up onto the screen here. Just bear with me for a second.
I think, John, you had mentioned that you had been looking at it. I actually have driven by and peeked through the library, and I'm thrilled. The windows are wonderful.
Oh, the windows are so great. So this is my limited video.
Oh.
I'm just going to maybe pull it backwards so you can see. So this is actually the front of the library. The parking lot of the arena is up in the front there. This big maple box is enclosing our book drop. We just because of the plan of the building, and we were just grateful to have a library on this site, right? So we did get a book drop that you could drive up to, which is fantastic, but it just dropped right into the middle of the space. So we did have to have a piece of cabinetry made so that we could just have the book drop bin underneath that slot, catch everything securely, and then we'll just empty it from there. So that's what that big box is. And then just right there, those doors are the doors that go into the front hallway and the youth hangout space. We're figuring out what that'll look like with COVID. It might not have very much hangout happening in it for the first little bit. And then this second set of doors is the doors that go into the community early on space. So if it's a shared program, we can have those doors open into the library as well, and people can come back and forth between all of the spaces. The flooring is in. It is an epoxy flooring with a treatment so that people won't slip, but it'll be easy in an arena setting to clean. And it won't be too loud for book trucks to clatter across like tile would be. We don't have carpet in the space. I will have a small carpet in the kids area to sit down on, but not in the rest of the space. And then that's our staff workroom. Our service desk will be right here. A staff workroom for Moncton is like just incredible to fathom, to have a sink to wash the coffee pot when you have book club, and all those things are all things that we didn't have. So we're going to have a desk back here as well for us to just use as a work surface. And there's a little kitchenette there because right now the shifts are 5 hours, so they don't get there's not really a meal break, but they can, you know, zip back and have their snack and such as they're working. And then we do have a hallway there with a storage room and 2 washrooms within the library space. The accessible washrooms are out in the hallway, but there are actually washrooms within the library space as well. And then you're just seeing the back space, and this corner is where the children's area will be. This is excellent videography, as John pointed out. And you can also hear my work boots squeaking as I turn, which is funny. Just the view, everything that I picked is based on the presence of the trees and the green that's outside. And that's our space. Yeah. So in terms of an update, I'll just stop sharing my screen so you can all see each other again. There we go. So construction is going well. We did receive occupancy early today, so that's great. We can start moving things in. Our service desk has been delivered and we're starting to get furnishings. We are expecting that the library won't be able to be operational in the space until sort of mid-October, beginning to mid-October. The holdup is our shelving. It's promised for the first week of October. It could come sooner than that. The company prefers to under-promise and over-deliver, so that's a good thing, but it also kind of means we're not quite sure. Moncton isn't a very large collection, so we should be able to relocate it fairly quickly after it gets after the shelving gets installed. I did do each individual piece of furnishings that I wanted by the 3-quote system, but a lot of our furnishings is coming from the same company, so it will all come together, most of it, and then we'll have it all set up and ready to go. The goal for us is to try and offer curbside out of the existing Moncton location for as long as possible until we switch over to the other one. So the goal is to have curbside run as smoothly as possible. We will have to stop browsing appointments as we start to have boxes and bins pile up in that small space in Moncton. And as we start to move one piece of the collection at a time, there won't be as much for them to browse, obviously. So there will be a little bit of a break in the browsing for Moncton and the computer use as we go. But the new location has room for more public computers, more Wi-Fi spaces as that becomes appropriate as to do with COVID and social distancing. But we're looking forward to making that switch. And we're considering options for a grand opening, but we can't, of course, have one with COVID. What we're considering is allowing more appointments in Moncton than we typically would. For example, for the first couple of weeks or the first month, depending on demand, allocating some resources over that way so that we can have more people come through in sort of one at a time or family groups at a time. And then inviting, for sure, the Moncton Branch Advisory Subcommittee members who worked so hard for all those years trying to find a solution for us. Council having tours, library board having tours, staff being able to be present and have some training. So we're working our way through that. And I have discussed with the, sorry, is there a question? Sorry, I talked too fast.
Oh, you absolutely could have finished, Rebecca. I was just going to say that
sorry, I wasn't
maybe
sure if it was going.
Once we get closer to the grand opening, that I think having certain people through and to do that one-offs, but I think we should do a virtual walkthrough coming.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Coming through the and put it onto the YouTube channel, put it onto our Twitter feed and to push people towards the YouTube channel, but do like a virtual walkthrough and a video like what you had done there. And you could always put little highlight points. We have this, this, and this. This is our new desk. Because a lot of people will access that when they can do everything from home and online.
Yeah.
They'll access it, and it's not the same sight and sound to go in and smell it and see it and ooh, ah, but it's a wow, that looks great. Like you could sit here and explain till midnight at a board meeting of what the interior looks like, but that 35-second clip said infinitely more than you could put into an hour's worth of speech as to what you have. Just having a nice once everything gets done and dusted and we're good to go, doing a virtual walkthrough and putting it on the municipality Facebook or basically the municipality website on the YouTube channel, and then pushing it through Facebook and Twitter.
Absolutely, that's great. The other pieces that I do have arranged with the banner that they will come prior to, like once we've got everything loaded, they'll come and do some pictures and we'll do an article in the banner as well. So they're already interested, and that's great too. But you're right, that virtual is a good way to go. And we absolutely, and perhaps the mayor would like to be a part of that and that kind of thing. So, or the board chair and the mayor. And so we can talk about that as we get closer to. The other thing that just happened, and I apologize, I didn't flip it to you yet, is the press release came out on Friday jointly from the archives and the library, doing a call for historic images of Moncton to be submitted via the Orsay North Perth platform that we have. When I was preparing for this, one of the libraries that I was sort of not modeling, but used in my research to do the design work for the Moncton Library, had some very large historic photos of their community in it, and they looked really modern and great, blown up huge. And so I reached out to the archives, and they identified that, yeah, we have some postcard images, but we don't have a lot of images documenting the community in Moncton over time. So things like community picnics or baseball games. I was looking for like reunions or parades or that kind of thing that I could show the life in Moncton. The community, the spirit of bringing the community together in Moncton. And one of the things that I've discovered through this process is that the original Moncton Library in like 1899 was part of a store right on the corner in Moncton, and they were a community hub. That store was a community hub. And so celebrating the fact that Moncton's been part of that community in that capacity for a lot of years, has been, is important to me. So we are working on sort of a joint call for images. The images will then become, the people sort of click off their permissions. They become part of the archives collection. And then I do have a bit of just a bit, because it's a small space, but a bit of an art installation planned to do with the historic images of Moncton as well. So that's just another piece, and I will make a note to send you the press release if you haven't seen it yet. That's my Moncton update. Does anyone have any questions about it?
Not a question, but a comment. It looks fantastic.
It does. Thank you. Makes me very happy.
Yes, I agree.
Leanne has a question.
Leanne?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, realizing that having a grand opening is going to be really difficult, and like Matt had said, you know, doing a video, of course, but any kind of virtual celebration that could support the community to help to celebrate this building, I think would be, you know, a really good idea. I unfortunately, it's pretty unforeseeable, but when we're going to be able to have, you know, these restrictions loosened up. And I think the more creative we can be in terms of having, you know, the mayor have some kind of speech or what, you know, all those kinds of things you typically would do, but kind of do it obviously in a remote kind of way, whether it's through WebEx or whatever. Just a thought, and that way we're still marking it. We're still marking the celebration, and actually could be kept, you know, archived as well for future reference. And that way people can, if they want to, they can be part of it too.
Yes, thank you. That's a good point.
Yeah, just a thought. Thanks.
I think that's a great idea. Actually, Leanne, when you said archive, maybe you should put a time capsule in there with all COVID information and restrictions that were happening when the library was opening. But yeah, I think it would be good to mark something, and also that it's something great to celebrate, and
Mhm.
also just another reason to bring forward the things that the library does in the community. Great idea, Leanne. Is there any other comments or observations for Moncton? If not, we'll go to 12.2 North Perth Public Library 2020 meeting schedule amendment. Rebecca,
So-
would you speak to this?
Just a brief one for you. I understand that your April meeting was canceled. We do have a requirement to have 7 meetings this year, so we do have to do a makeup meeting for that April meeting. I'm proposing just plunking in on the second Tuesday of November, which is November 10th. That would mean that we would have a meeting the second Tuesday of October, November, and December, and that will work nicely with budget process anyway. It won't be that we don't have anything to talk about, but just checking to see if November 10th is a date that works for the majority.
Yeah, I think
Perfect.
that should work. Yeah,
Okay.
and April, we really didn't know what to talk about, given that things were so uncertain. So I think now that things are moving, that was a more efficient use of our time, that should there be discussions needed, that we can be a bit more effective. In April, we're in limbo now, but we were really in limbo back in April.
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. I don't think we don't need a motion or anything like that for
I
that.
don't think so. No.
Okay. So 12.3 is an in-camera session regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, regarding North Perth Public Library staff. Sarah, I don't know if there's probably nobody in the building. Do we need to close that door? But
So you'll need a motion to go in camera.
okay.
We should close the door. The live stream has to be stopped. And you may wish, I don't know if the rest of if any of you require it, but you may wish to take like a 5-minute comfort break and come back in 5 minutes if you want to.
So would you folks like to take a 5-minute break?
I don't need one, no.
Pardon? 13. Oh, sorry. Are we okay? Good. My apologies.
Thank you, Simon.
Yes, thank you, Simon. I'm lucky that my 20 and 21-year-old are home because they usually help me with the text. So I'm glad that I've got Simon here. So is there anything else that folks would like to say or anything? I think my apologies. I think I should have included a comfort break during this, but hey, folks, that was a very productive meeting. I really appreciate your input and working with all of you. I agree with John. It would be so nice to meet with you in person. At this point, we don't know. For the next meeting, we are going to have location and format. We'll get back to you on that. It all depends on how things go in October. So at this point, the next meeting will be Tuesday, October 13th. So thank you very much. And I don't think do we make a motion to adjourn? We do?
Yeah.
Okay. Terrence making the movement and Matt seconding it. Thank you very much. All in favor? Thank you. Okay.
Night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry if I carried on and blathered a little too much occasionally.
No,
but I-
no.